across the cold, indifferent expanse of the cosmos, where empires rose and fell on the strength of their star-forged armadas and the chilling precision of their logic engines, humanity was a curious anomaly. We, the latecomers to the grand theater of the Galactic Consortium, were deemed sentimental. Our capacity for deep, resonant empathy, the very core of our social fabric, was openly, repeatedly, and derisively labeled a flaw by civilizations that had long since purged such inefficiencies from their genetically sculpted bloodlines. They called our empathy a flaw. Then it became the only thing that could save them. And this is the story of that cataclysmic miscalculation, a testament to the universe's brutal irony, and a lesson etched in the ruins of hubris for every soul seeking to understand the true nature of power. This is the unvarnished truth of how a perceived human weakness, scorned by beings of supposed infinite intellect, became the last, desperate shield against an oblivion they could neither comprehend nor combat. Forget what you think you know about strength. Forget the cold equations and the sterile perfection. Today, we delve into the heart of what it means to be truly powerful, to find resilience not in the denial of our nature, but in its fiercest embrace. For eons, the Varkosian ascendancy had dominated the known galaxy. Their empire, built upon a foundation of ruthless pragmatism and unwavering adherence to what they termed absolute logic, spanned 1,000 star systems. The Varkosians, beings of crystalline intellect and bodies engineered for peak performance in any environment, saw emotions as vestigial, a chaotic remnant of primitive evolutionary stages. Their grand compatronium, a planet-sized sentient network, dictated policy, strategy, and even social interaction based on pure, unadulterated data. Empathy to them was a dangerous variable, a source of irrationality, a biochemical imbalance that led to inefficient resource allocation and compromised decision-making. When humanity, fresh from the cradle of Saul, tentatively stepped onto this galactic stage, our diplomats, our explorers, our very essence, became a subject of morbid curiosity and thinly veiled contempt. At the Consortium Assembly on Xylos, the Varkosian High Emissary, Krelix Prime, famously broadcast his assessment after a human plea for aid to a fledgling species facing ecological collapse. The Terran proposal, his synthesized voice echoed through the chamber devoid of inflection, is predicated on emotional resonance, a factor statistically irrelevant to galactic stability. Their empathy, while perhaps a quaint survival mechanism on their isolated world, is a quantifiable detriment in the broader calculus of interstellar affairs. It is a flaw, a vulnerability to be noted, and if necessary, exploited. Other established powers, like the insectoid Cathar Collective, driven by cold, hive-mind utilitarianism, and the ethereal, energy-based Lumina Combine, who perceived emotions as crude, low-frequency disturbances, echoed this sentiment. Humanity was the galactic outlier, the species that felt too much. Our art was baffling, our social bonds perplexing, our altruism a strategic blunder. We were often relegated to minor trade routes, our scientific contributions scrutinized with suspicion, our warnings about unforeseen consequences of unchecked technological expansion dismissed as fear-mongering born from an overactive amygdala. We were the underdogs, not because of a lack of intellect or courage, but because our core operating system, empathy, was deemed obsolete by the self-proclaimed masters of the universe. There were even factions within humanity, particularly among the neo-rationalist enclaves on Mars and Titan who argued for the Varkosian correction, a voluntary societal shift towards emotional suppression, a forced evolution to shed the burden of empathy and compete on the galactic stage using the established metrics of cold logic and calculated aggression. They pointed to Varkosian dominance as undeniable proof. Feelings are friction, their mantra went. Logic is velocity. The pressure to conform, to amputate a part of our soul to be accepted, was immense. This was the brutal truth we faced. In a galaxy that worshipped the machine mind, our human heart was a liability. To endure this constant dismissal, this galactic gaslighting, required a quiet, internal fortitude, a stoic resolve to understand our own nature even when the universe itself declared it flawed. It was the discipline of holding onto your truth when all external validation was absent, a resilience forged in the crucible of interstellar indifference. Then came the silence, not a cessation of sound, but a cessation of everything. It began at the periphery in the sparsely populated systems beyond the outer rim. One by one, star systems winked out of existence, not in cataclysmic explosions, but in an eerie, unsettling fade. Probes sent to investigate simply vanished. Long-range sensors returned nothing but static, a void where vibrant civilizations had once thrived. The Varkosians, initially dismissive, attributing it to localized stellar phenomena or primitive species self-destructing, soon found their meticulously crafted models failing. The silence spread, an invisible, inexorable tide, consuming Varkosian border worlds, Cathar hive clusters, even brushing the incandescent edges of Lumina territory. Panic, a previously theoretical concept for races like the Varkosians, began to ripple through the Galactic Consortium. They called it the atemporal scourge. It wasn't an invasion fleet. There were no ships, no discernible enemy to fight. It was as if reality itself was being unwritten. The Varkosian Grand Compatronium ran trillions of simulations, its processing cores glowing with furious effort, yet it could not predict the scourge's path nor ascertain its nature. Their most powerful weapons, planet crackers and nova inducers, were fired into the advancing void, only to be swallowed without a trace. Their logic, so absolute, so defining, hit a wall of incomprehensible, terrifying nothingness. The Cathar, whose collective consciousness allowed for incredibly complex tactical responses, found themselves unable to coordinate against an enemy that had no discernible strategy, no presence to analyze. The Lumina Combine attempted to resonate with the scourge on higher dimensional frequencies, only to find their own energy patterns disrupted, their forms flickering precariously. The brutal truth began to dawn across the galaxy. All their vaunted genetic superiority, their millennia of technological advancement, their unshakable faith in cold, hard data, it was all utterly, hopelessly useless. Their strengths, the very pillars of their civilizations, had become rigidities, unable to flex or adapt to a threat that operated outside every known paradigm. The Varkosian High Council, for the first time in its recorded history, registered mission failure across all defense sectors. Krellix Prime, whose pronouncements had once dripped with condescending certainty, was now seen with a flicker of something akin to unease in his optical sensors. The facade of invincibility was not just cracking, it was shattering. This was the universe delivering its most brutal lesson. Cling to your dogma, your established methods, your definition of strength, and you will be broken when the context shifts. The truly resilient, the truly stoic mind understands that all systems are temporary, all knowledge incomplete, and the only constant is the necessity of adaptation. The galaxy was learning this lesson at the cost of its existence. And in this growing darkness, on overlooked human colony worlds and research outposts, something else was happening. Humanity, being on the fringes, was initially less affected, but the existential dread was palpable. Yet, alongside the fear, there was a different kind of observation. Dr. Aris Thorne, a controversial xenoethologist stationed at the remote Copernicus station near the Orion Spur, a man often ridiculed by his Varkosian colleagues for his anomalous interest in subjective alien experiences, was studying the few garbled sensor readings from systems just before they succumbed to the atemporal scourge. While the Varkosians focused on energy signatures and quantum fluctuations, Thorne was looking for patterns in the absence of patterns, in the subtle ways the scourge didn't behave. He noticed something almost imperceptible: systems with a high degree of complex, interlinked biological life, particularly those exhibiting what he termed collective emotional resonance, seemed to resist the scourge for slightly longer, their fade-out less abrupt, more hesitant. His initial reports to the consortium were met with the usual dismissal, filed under anecdotal data, human sentimentality. But as Varkosian science failed, as their empire began to crumble, a few younger Varkosian analysts, their faith in the grand Competronium shaken, began to secretly review Thorne's flawed research. One such analyst, Unit 734, designated Lyra by human colleagues she'd interacted with on a joint research project years prior, an act of inefficient labeling she had initially protested, found Thorne's data correlated with previously discarded variables in the Competronium's own failed models, variables related to psychosocial cohesion indices. The turning point came when the scourge targeted Xylos, the very heart of the Galactic consortium. The Varkosian fleet, the pride of their empire, was annihilated in minutes, their logic-driven tactics proving utterly predictable to an enemy that wasn't playing by any known rules. Desperation, raw and unfiltered, finally overrode dogma. With nothing left to lose, a frantic, multi-species call went out. Any theory, any approach, all options are on the table. It was Thorne, alongside a small, dedicated team of human scientists, linguists, and even artists, people whose skills were previously deemed non-essential by the galactic powers, who stepped forward. His hypothesis was radical, almost heretical to the Varkosian mindset. The atemporal scourge wasn't an entity to be fought with weapons or outthought with logic. It was perhaps a form of cosmic imbalance, a reaction to something, or even a form of consciousness so alien it perceived conventional existence as noise, and was quieting it. But it seemed to be subtly repelled, or at least interfered with, by strong, coherent fields of shared emotional experience. Empathy, Thorne proposed, wasn't just about understanding another being. It was about creating a resonant field, a tapestry of interconnected consciousness. The brutal truth is that genuine breakthroughs, the kind that shatter paradigms, rarely emerge from the established center. They bubble up from the fringes, from the minds unconstrained by the dominant orthodoxy, from those who dare to look where no one else is looking, to value what everyone else has discarded. It was humanity's flaw, our deep-seated, neurologically ingrained capacity for shared emotional states, that offered the slimmest, most improbable sliver of hope. It required immense courage, a stoic defiance of past ridicule, to present such a theory in the face of galactic annihilation, to trust in an inner knowing when all external authorities had failed. This was the spark, ignited not by superior firepower or intellect, but by the quiet, persistent power of human connection. The plan was audacious, bordering on insane by any conventional galactic standard. They couldn't fight the scourge, so they would attempt to harmonize with it, or more accurately, to create oases of such potent, coherent emotional energy that the scourge would pass them by, or its effects would be dampened. They called it Project Nightingale. Across every remaining human world and on refugee ships carrying the desperate survivors of other species, a call went out. Not for soldiers, but for storytellers, for musicians, for counselors, for families, for anyone capable of deep, authentic connection. They began to construct resonance chambers, not physical structures, but coordinated, global, and eventually interstellar networks of focused, shared emotion. This wasn't about simply feeling good. It was an act of profound collective will, a brutal effort. Imagine billions focusing their consciousness, guided by artists and empaths, to project shared experiences of courage in the face of fear, of love amidst loss, of unity despite diversity. They drew upon humanity's deepest archetypes, its most poignant narratives, its most powerful music. They shared grief for the lost worlds, not suppressing it, but channeling it into a vast, interconnected current of sorrow, then transmuting it into a defiant affirmation of existence. It was exhausting, mentally and emotionally grueling. Many faltered. The neo-rationalists on Mars initially resisted, calling it mass hysteria, until the scourge began to lap at the edges of their own domed cities, and their vaunted logic offered no defense. The Varkosians, including Krelix Prime, watched in stunned silence, their logical frameworks utterly incapable of processing what they were witnessing. Lyra, Unit 734, who had risked her status by collaborating with Thorn, helped translate the human methodology into terms the Varkosian remnants could begin to grasp, framing emotional resonance as a complex form of quantum field manipulation, a way to stabilize local reality against the scourge's entropic influence. It was a stretch, but it was enough for some of them to reluctantly participate, their ingrained aversion to emotion warring with their instinct for survival. And then the miracles began, small at first. A human outpost, deep within a resonance chamber, reported the advancing edge of the scourge visibly bending around their local space. A refugee flotilla, broadcasting a symphony of shared hope and sorrow, found the debilitating sensory static of the scourge receding. On Earth itself, the scourge, which had been projected to consume the Sol system within days, slowed its advance, its leading edge becoming frayed and indistinct where it encountered the powerful, unified emotional field generated by billions of humans. It wasn't a weapon, it was a shield, a buffer, and in some isolated instances it was more. Human linguists and empaths, shielded within these resonant fields, began to perceive something within the scourge, not an intellect in the conventional sense, but a vast, ancient, and profoundly lonely consciousness. It wasn't malevolent. It was more like a cosmic force of nature, drawn to a kind of existential vacuum, and repelled by the vibrant, messy, interconnected energy of life. An energy most intensely and coherently expressed through shared emotion, through empathy. The Krill hegemony, those paragons of cold logic, had their core worlds on the brink. Their grand compatronium was failing. Delegate Vorlag, who had once sneered at Ambassador Kalen's empathic pleas, now found his entire civilization dependent on the flaw he had so arrogantly dismissed. Human ships, protected by their empathic fields, were the only ones capable of navigating the fringes of scourge-affected space to deliver vital supplies or rescue isolated alien enclaves. It was humans who taught other species, including the humbled krill, how to build their own, albeit weaker, resonance chambers, how to tap into the collective emotional strength they had long suppressed. The irony was a universe-sized sledgehammer. The brutal truth was laid bare. Their genetic superiority and logical purity had been a catastrophic blind spot. True strength was not the absence of perceived weakness, but the integration and wise application of all facets of being. The salvation of the galaxy didn't come from a bigger gun or a smarter algorithm. It came from the human heart, from the ability to feel, to connect, to share, to understand, not just each other, but the very fabric of existence in a way cold logic never could. This was empathy forged into a crucible, not a passive sentiment, but an active, powerful force capable of reshaping reality. A stoic dedication to a higher form of understanding, enduring unimaginable pressure to protect not just humanity, but all life. In the aftermath, the galaxy was irrevocably changed. The atemporal scourge was not defeated, but contained, pacified, its advance halted by a network of sanctuary systems resonating with the potent chorus of life, anchored by human understanding. The Varkosian ascendancy was a shadow of its former self, its core philosophy shattered. Krellix Prime, in a public address transmitted across the newly stabilized channels, made a statement that echoed through the recovering worlds. We predicated our existence on the infallibility of logic. We defined strength as the absence of emotion. We were wrong. The Terrans, with their empathy, have shown us that the most complex equations are found not in the stars, but in the connections between conscious beings. Their perceived flaw was, in fact, a higher-order function we had forgotten how to compute. Humanity's place in the cosmos was redefined. We were no longer the sentimental outliers. We were the harmonizers, the weavers of resilience, the species that had looked into the abyss and taught the galaxy how to sing back. Our empathy was no longer a punchline. It was studied, revered, and desperately sought after. The Galactic Consortium was rebuilt, not on principles of pure logic or military might alone, but on a new understanding of interconnectedness, of the profound power inherent in emotional intelligence and shared experience. And the lesson for you listening to this is not just a tale of science fiction, of aliens and cosmic threats. It is a brutal, unvarnishing truth about your own life, your own potential. How many times have you been told that your sensitivity is a weakness, that your compassion is naive, that your intuition, your ability to feel deeply, to connect with others on a level that transcends mere transaction, is a flaw in a world that prizes cold calculation and ruthless ambition? How many times have you tried to suppress these parts of yourself, to conform to some external, sterile ideal of strength? Stop that flaw they pointed out, that trait you were taught to hide or fix. That might be your very own Project Nightingale. It might be the unique frequency only you can broadcast, the one thing that can navigate the atemporal scourges in your own life, the crushing weight of expectation, the void of loneliness, the onslaught of negativity. Your empathy, your unique way of seeing and feeling the world, is not a bug. It's a feature, a superpower waiting to be acknowledged and wielded. The Varkosians of your life, the critics, the doubters, perhaps even your own inner saboteur, will always point to the supposed efficiency of detachment. But true strength, the kind that endures, the kind that innovates, the kind that saves, is forged in the heart's authentic fire. It's the courage to feel deeply in a world that often encourages numbness. It's the wisdom to connect when others build walls. It's the resilience to offer understanding when met with aggression. So the call to action is this: identify your empathy. What is that core part of you that you've been told is too much, too soft, too unconventional? What is that deep, intrinsic quality that makes you you? Acknowledge it, honor it, cultivate it. Stop seeing it as a liability and start understanding it as your most potent strategic advantage. Your capacity for deep connection, your intuitive insights, your compassion, these are not weaknesses to be overcome. They are the very essence of your human potential. The spark within that, when fully embraced, can not only save you but also illuminate the path for others. The galaxy of your life is waiting for your unique song. Don't let them silence it. Let it resonate. Let it save you. Let it save them.